Well, good morning everybody, this is Dear Mama Sal on a wet day here in British Columbia. It's at 12 degrees, which is nice, which would make it, got it? 54 if you are in northern Washington State. The word for today is going to still be interpretation, because I promised all the broadcast viewers I was going to do a week on this, because it's a really big subject, and I think the more examples that we can find of it, the better. I apologize for the noise of my windshield wipers. I have yet to find windshield wipers that don't make a noise on my car, so and it's fall, so get over it. They're not going to go away, and I'm not going to drive without my windshield wipers on. All right, so there were a number of different things that happened this weekend with broadcasts and everything else that that have to do with interpretation. And so I thought I'd discuss a couple of them because it's really important. I had a great comment come in from one of the viewers, and unfortunately with my pea brain I cannot remember who it was, but what they were telling me was that one of the things that they, and I'm not sure if it's a he or a she either, but they said they had a boss one day tell them to stop whining. And this viewer said, I could have looked at this in many ways. I could have looked at it, you know, very negatively and all sorts of other things. But the interesting thing was that this viewer decided to go, what? And realized that they were whining. So instead of taking it personally, they took it as some really good feedback. Wow, that takes character, doesn't it? Very, very interesting reaction. You know, in other words, they looked at it and said, you know, is it the truth? Am I whining? And they said to themselves, yes, I am. And so they didn't take it personally that the boss hated them. I'm not sure what they did. They probably apologized and got out of the way. But, you know, it's like, I think that's taking real responsibility for your actions. So, for example, and I know this is going to sort of be upsetting for some of you, but, you know, I warned everybody this could upset a few of you as we go along here. And I don't mean to do that, so I'm going to put that warning in the front of this. But, I mean, if you live at home, and you don't clean up after yourself, and your parents call you a slob, whilst that may be unfair and not kind language, you got to ask yourself, am I being a slob? You know, I really would ask you to ask yourself the question, is there any truth in what they're saying? And if there is, apologize for being a slob. By the way, if you get a sense of humor, I'm amazed how it deflects the anger. You know, if you actually turn around and go, you know something? I left that plate on the side instead of putting it in the dishwasher. I don't know what I was thinking. Did I think that the tooth fairy was going to come and pick it up and put it in the dishwasher? I don't know. I'm so sorry. You know, get a sense of humor about it and own your stuff. You know, we are so scared of owning our stuff. And that's what causes a lot of the problem. Is it making sense? Or if somebody says, you know, you're constantly late. Well, obviously, this person who's saying this has a need to be on time. They are an on-time person. Now, I know it's really strange, and I've been there. I'm an on-time person most of the time. But on-time people are inclined to marry be late people. I think it's one of God's little bits of humor to watch them try and compromise. I used to be married to somebody who thought that being late was fashionable. Nobody's on time, everybody is fashionably late. And I said, there's nothing fashionable about being late. It's rude. See, totally different mindset. So what do you do if you're an early and you're married to a late? Well, again, it's all about interpretation, and it's all about now a compromise. And so flexibility would be, do we agree? Ooh, lots of water in the river today. Do we agree that you will not be quite as late as normal, and I will not be quite as early as normal? And that way we'll be a little bit late, but not too late. Maybe you come to a compromise. But it is amazing how those opposites seem to marry each other or produce each other. You know what I mean? You will have a parent who is absolutely a neat freak, and they spawn slobs called teenagers. So it's really interesting how that happens. But the question is, think about it. If you are a neat, have you been a neat all your life? Were you born neat? You probably pooped neat. You know what I mean? I think some people are actually either born that way or are taught to be that neat so early on by wonderful parents that it's almost unfair. Now, I like to think that the rest of us are creative, i.e. slobs. But it's creative. What we do with our plates and what we do with our stuff is creative. Let's be honest, very creative. So you'll also find that a perfect housekeeper will be married to a slob. You have to know that. And so that requires creativity as well. And a great sense of humor. And normally it works quite well until you're already a bit overwhelmed, and then suddenly you walk in. I always used to say that, some men's idea of putting things ready to be washed was to leave them on the floor. But not all men, I hasten to add. So the truth is that being tidy is not that important. It's not a need of a lot of people. It is a need of some people. So it doesn't make them bad people just because they're not neat. It does if you have an expectation that the world should come up to your expectations. And that would make you ruler of the universe. Now, what most people do is they come up to a compromise. I don't mind that you leave this, this, and this less tidy, but can we please keep the common rooms, i.e. the living room, dining room, kitchen, tidy? And normally the end of that sentence would be, so if we get visitors, I don't have to be scrambling and looking like I'm a rotten housekeeper, whatever it is. I think there is a compromise in that. But it is your need to be tidy and their need not to be. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about this week, is people's personal needs. And this is where a lot of the problems, for example, with teenagers comes in, right? You need them to take the trash out, and they need to watch television, or they have a need to relax, play video games, watch television, whatever, fill it in, whatever they want. Their need is to relax, which we interpret as being lazy. Well, I think to a large extent it's because we don't actually word it in the right way sometimes. So what if you start with, John, I know you want to go play a video game, and I really want you to have fun playing that. So I wonder if you could just quickly take the garbage out so I don't have to disturb you later. Because that is your commitment to the house. And I really don't want to disturb you halfway through a game. They're going to accept that a lot better than you storming in there halfway through the 5th level of the 16th house or whatever it is of their video game, and going, John, take out the garbage. One shows respect for them and their environment, and the other shows total disrespect and a loss of control in a lot of cases. And now, you do understand I'm saying this intellectually because I am not perfect at any of this. But what we are doing this week is discussing it. Because if we can discuss it and talk about it and own it, then it'll be easier for us to see it, and if we choose, to change it. Now, somebody brought up the conversation on the broadcast that they knew somebody who was depressed and who chose not to make any changes in their life. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say, if you are depressed, not changing your attitude, not doing the work you need to do, not taking the pills you need to take and all that stuff, don't be surprised if you stay depressed. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. And by the way, if you then add, sitting around doing nothing except playing video games to numb your mind and not make you look at the stuff that's causing depression, then you will continue to be depressed and probably get deeper and deeper. But a lot of people will go, oh, it's not a bad way to live, actually. I sit around all day and play video games. I mean, how many of us would like the time to be able to do that? So, and you understand, I have been clinically depressed, so I know the story. And I know what it took for me to battle my way out. There's some really pretty trees around here. To battle my way out. It took a lot of work, a lot of self-understanding. So let's stop, if we can this week, lying to ourselves. And that would be that normally we're pretty defensive, right? So somebody says, you're useless with money, we immediately come out fighting. Now, if we have this whole interpretation thing sorted out, we will think about what is their need. Their need is for responsibility, financial responsibility, and they love us enough to want us to be financially responsible as well, because they believe our life would be easier. Right? So when you hear somebody say, "You're useless with money," part of our job, if we want to live happier lives, is not to react to that, but to translate it. But the other thing that we need to do is have a good hard look at what they're saying. And is it the truth? Now normally we defend it. We go, "No, I'm not." Well, excuse me, if you've been bankrupt 3 times, duh. You know. Now, don't get me wrong, if you've been bankrupt 3 times because of stuff that was beyond your control, I understand that, so I'm not judging that. Don't run with it. But you understand what I'm saying, though, which is, you know, if we don't live within our means, if we buy things we want rather than things we can afford, then we're not being financially responsible. For example, you all know that I had a bit of a panic thing where I lost a week of work. At the same time, my computer had a problem. I ended up with $1,000 worth of purchases I needed to make, as well as lose a week's wage. Well, that's a pretty big hit in 1 month. So I immediately sat down and went, okay, how am I going to readjust my spending? Now, obviously, I am very fortunate. I have an overdraft facility and I have a line of credit. So I'm very fortunate in that. But even so, I have to work out how to save the money. Because if you think about it, to make up 1,000, I don't know about you, how many weeks or how many days, how many weeks, whatever, would it take you to make up $1,000 worth of expenditure? And most people don't think about that. And if you've got children, I would teach them that. I wouldn't say that this video game costs X dollars. I would say this video game is going to cost you, 10 weeks of your pocket money or allowance, whatever you call it. That makes sense to them. That means you won't get any pocket money for 10 weeks. They get that. They don't understand $25 as much, you know what I mean, or whatever it is that the figure is. But they do understand when it relates directly to their understanding. They can interpret that. And I've known children who've been delighted to do that. Children, actually, if you give them the information in the correct way, they very much are willing to work. They're very much willing to work for reward. Quite a lot of them, if you word it right. Normally they're very keen at the beginning, but not so keen later on. So have a look at yourself this day and this week and get honest. Work really hard in interpreting what people really are saying behind what they say. And tomorrow we will talk about how to word things slightly better as we go along. I'd like to thank you all very much indeed for watching. I really appreciate it. For those of you who are new, please watch the roll-up at the end of the video here. It'll tell you where to find our links and how to be a regular Dear Mama Sal person. If you liked the video, if it made some sense to you, please give it a thumbs up. And I would encourage you to share with anybody that you know that maybe has a need to learn some of this stuff. We're constantly trying to improve how we live our lives, not just you, but me too. This is a joint task force. All right, everybody, have a super day, and start looking a little bit more deeply into what gets said and what you say. This is Dear Mama Sal saying, have a great day. Bye-bye for now.